Holly got in there. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Community Hour. Looks like we got Holly in the shot. That's the important part. She's the moneymaker. Good to see everybody for another Community Hour. We've been looking forward to this all week. I've been a little slow on content this week. We are so busy right now between the house build and I've been on the road a lot this week, so that's been keeping us a little busy in terms of content. But here we are. We got a full hour to just relax and talk about whatever we want to. Of course, we'll do it the normal way where we have a topic to start with, and then we'll just start answering questions and probably go down a million different rabbit trails. But the topic we thought we'd talk about is media and the whole idea of everything from entertainment to educational resources to news, to any kind of information. We rely on a media that I don't think I need to sit here and explain why we can't rely on traditional media to get our information anymore. We know that the big conglomerates are just a joke and too centralized. They serve 5 companies that probably answer to one person, and they just don't do a good job of representing you. Like, when was the last time you heard about a meeting happening, a county commission meeting happening, or something like that? If your local media isn't really informing you about the happenings, it's failing you. And same with the national media and everything else. When they're hyper fixating on just absurd, irrelevant distraction issues, or just straight up propaganda, they're doing a disservice to all of their viewers, and you're not getting what you need. But I, as an entertainer, I do believe that we need entertainment. We do need information. We need what Gabby does, which is journalism. We need people to be professionals when it comes to alerting the community.
And for people to start caring about their community newspapers more, because I think you interact with platforms like Facebook, and we all know that most local newspapers can't afford to have most of their news online, or they don't have like a dedicated person running their social media. And so you end up with all you're seeing, if you're using Facebook as a main news source, which a lot of people do. I think a majority of people use Facebook as a news source. Then you start realizing that you just get sucked into this vortex of only caring about mainstream or national news. And then you totally lose any concept of what's going on in your own community, which I think is kind of intentional.
So that's our pitch for what the idea of the topic is today, is that we really need to fill these roles that media traditionally served. We need to do them ourselves, though, because we cannot rely on the exterior media anymore that doesn't really benefit us. It has an agenda that is not necessarily our own, and it has no use to us. So we really need to recreate media for ourselves. And that's just kind of a topic we want to start talking about and get ideas from other people about what they're doing. Because here in the YouTube space, of course, you're seeing the rise of a lot of very cool, very niched independent media, but at the same time, you're seeing censorship occurring in mass. And so it's a very turbulent time in the creator space and in content creation. And so we're trying to navigate that, but also figure out how we can become more sovereign and how we can connect like-minded communities of people like we have on this channel, people who are homesteaders, who live a rural lifestyle and value a rural lifestyle. See how we can tell the stories that matter to them. See how we can talk about the political happenings that affect them, like we do on this channel. And also things like how-tos and educational resources. How can we create all of that ourselves? So that's what we're trying to do with Finding Country, and in a more informal way with the Sovereign Village Project. But Gabby's main focus here is Finding Country, and that's kind of a very broad publication that's supposed to address all of that for us. It's supposed to be an educational resource, but also tell just the stories of people in the community. Gabby, you can probably explain it better.
Yeah, so kind of my vision and what I've been kind of working with Finding Country is it's still a very local publication, because a lot of my stories are, they do have an anchor character or story that is related to someone in our local community. But I'm using stories from our local community to speak to broader concepts around self-sufficiency and around rural living, and just generally around kind of lifestyle design sort of things. And so by being able to bring the local community in, that's how I've been building an audience initially, is really tapping into these local stories where, you know, the news may cover these people all the time, but I'm coming in and covering them from a totally different perspective, because it's anchored in all of these concepts that we're talking about that are important to us, and not necessarily, it has, I guess, different news value than what a traditional local news would kind of angle would have. So it's kind of unique in that way. But that's kind of the goal with Finding Country, and I think that's where news should kind of head, where people should be consuming things about issues that matter the most to them, but that we should be tying them to local people and not necessarily just relying on mainstream news and kind of you know, the traditional kind of authority figures. Really just looking for people who just have subject matter expertise, you know. And kind of relying on them. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, basically. So I mean, this is basically like every community hour is kind of just a brainstorm session between us and yourselves. But what we're trying to figure out is how both of us as content creators address the problem of we want to remove ourselves really far from the system. As we saw from the whole coronavirus situation over the last year, the media is basically little more than a propaganda arm at this point for people whose interests are not the same as ours.
I don't want to tell the truth.
And that's fine, because I don't really believe that much that there ever is truly objective journalism. I don't think that people can be objective. And if there's money paying for a publication, of course, there's an agenda behind it. But I have no problem with that. But it seems there's really a demand and a need for independent media of people, for people that that just don't want any part of medical tyranny, who don't want any part of any kind of tyranny, and who want to homestead and truly become self-sufficient. Here in the YouTube space, there's a lot of content creators who are doing homestead stuff, but it's not like really serious.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's like, it's more like a lifestyle publication, and that's nice, but like we want to get down to nitty gritty. Like, how do you make this homestead life work? Like, how do you address the economic issue? How do you actually make your finances self-sufficient and do your own trade for a living?
How do you leverage your community too?
Yeah.
To make these things.
So as we explore it, we want to make content off of it, basically, as we explore our own lives. I feel like we need to get to some questions here.
Yes,
we were also going to mention that Gabby just put out the new publication.
I did. The May issue, yes.
Yeah, just today, right?
Yeah, we can I'll try and get a link in here in a second. But
you can just find it if you just go to findingcountry.com.
Yeah.
I think the top link will take you right to the newsletter sign up. But it's free, and Gabby really goes out and gets some really cool stories, and she finds really cool people. Like if anything about rural living, but especially self-sufficiency matter to you, they're stories that are like, they're kind of intangibly valuable, but they're really good.
Yeah.
Get it while it's free. All right. So, Chris is saying, who worked in the rain all day, got most of our fruit trees planted and 2 rows of potatoes.
Oh, wow.
Coffee and cozy sweater time. Yeah,
yep.
That's exact. So Chris is about an hour from us over in Perry County. That's exactly really what our day's been. We got cherry trees planted. We got pear trees planted. We took kind of an easy day.
Compost.
Oh yeah. I made Gabby flip the compost for the first time. That was an adventure, huh?
Yes, I need a massage.
And now we're enjoying chamomile and white pine needle tea. All right, let's see. Shout out from Georgia. Howdy. Georgia is one of my, any state in the South is my favorite state. I like the upper northern Georgia. That's really, really beautiful area up there. DJ Lanning says freaking Mockingbird media. Yeah, the term Mockingbird media comes from a real life instance of, I think it was called Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA actually got called before Congress to testify about their program of inserting operatives into media all over the place. And it's like, how can you call something a conspiracy theory when it's not a theory?
Yeah.
Error ASMR says, do you watch Curtis Stone? He says that a lot. Yes, I do. And I love Curtis Stone. He's a phenomenal content creator. I'm not sure what I said that was similar to him, but yeah, I do listen to Curtis Stone. He's what a wealth of a resource if you're trying to do any kind of commercial small scale farming. He's figured out a lot of stuff. Great urban farmer as well. Yeah, Curtis Stone stuff is great, and he's a very awake person. Chris says, especially local media. I like the idea of county level media that focuses on the surrounding counties, local farms, local businesses. Yeah. And really,
regional media.
If you're not a communicator, if you have something else that's maybe if you're like a person who's very mechanical, then you have a place to serve in this, But if you're a person who is any kind of content creator, I think whether you're a musician, graphic designer, a journalist, anything like that, now is a very exciting time because we can just recreate media the way we want. We get to build anything we want from the ground up. How much trouble is it to set up a website and get on whatever social medias you choose are still functional, and then become a news source for your community. In this example, like I'm not doing news, but I am doing content for a specific community of people, which is people who value self-sufficiency and sustainability and liberty and things like that. And Gabby's publication is like really anyone that values the rural lifestyle. So you really, whatever your interests are, if you're just a relatively good communicator, you can make some kind of publication, potentially some kind of revenue stream as well from that. And that can really help you, like, because part of the theme we want to talk about in Finding Country and Sovereign Village Project is how do you make your homestead an asset that produces all of your income? And I think one of the ways to do that is whatever trade you choose, there may be other things you can take away from that. Maybe you can teach that trade. So in addition to making, let's say, whether you're a blacksmith or a guitarist, you can play shows if you're a guitarist, or you could, work as a blacksmith, but you could also teach blacksmithing and teach a class on it, or you could make a course about it or something like that. So from our perspective as content creators, we always see a lot of opportunity there because the homesteading world is exploding. People are coming out and really wanting to learn how to be self-sufficient. And I think it's the cusp of a really big movement. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth and revenue from people who want to learn this lifestyle. And that's also, like, that theory is why I'm planting out so many perennials too, because I think there's going to be a lot of continuous demand for perennials that are really broad and good for a permaculture type of setup. So that's my main focus commercially on the farm. But yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity there if you're any kind of content creator. I would say now's the time in any discipline outside of content creation, anything, whatever you are, like now's the time to just go reinvent it, because the economy is definitely not gonna bode well here for a while. So you might as well have like an economic plan and start working towards self-sufficiency in your income. That's what we're both doing. Gabby still has an employer. I do not. I just do music for a living and the farm stuff. And I have various farms I'll work on for when they need me from time to time. But my income is really 100% self-sufficient at this point. And it's very diverse. I learned that after the pandemic, not to have all my eggs in one basket. And so now we could really take a blow from just about any direction. I would at least still have some kind of income coming in. And so we're just working on doing more and more of that.
And even though I have an employer, I still do side gigs and maintain certain relationships to make sure that even I have some backup too.
So it's like, although it's a scary time for a lot of people economically right now, it's really exciting because it's really, as businesses collapse and the scope of media changes and the landscape of America changes and people move back to rural areas and just everything changes. With all of that change is a tremendous amount of opportunity. And it's a lot more fun to look at life that way in a time like this, to look at all of the opportunity, because there really is a lot. I'm having to look at my phone for comments here. Okay. I'm not sure why they didn't load on the laptop. Error ASMR said, he was talking about Mockingbird Media. Yeah, that's a really common term that literally comes from the name of the Operation Mockingbird. But I guess we all pretend now that they just stopped that behavior and that the CIA has quit, trying to control media, and they've quit, running drugs and owning the cartels. Like, I'm sure they're all just a bunch of nice fellas. Serendipity blooming. Hey everyone, so glad I finally made it live. Yeah, it's good to have you here. It's good to have everyone here. We really, really love the live setting. It's a chance to have a conversation with a whole bunch of like-minded people all at once, and that's really a fun feeling when you start to find people. And I love the YouTube space for this, who value the same things you value. Because if you're young like us coming out of the city, we didn't really have any friends that had our same values. No. Everybody there is just in some kind of egotistical pursuit of whatever they've been told is success. Yeah. And I was in that too. I was in that matrix of pursuing something you didn't really want to pursue. And when you break outside of that, or when you start to break outside of that, it's hard to, your old friend group kind of falls away. So this is like us finding our new friends, basically. And we have found really actually true good friends through this channel, and that's been wonderful. Let's see what else we got. Oh, well, that's nice. I had no idea who you are, but you had kind faces, so I decided to listen. Kind faces. Well, I'll take it. Yeah. It was really Holly's kind face, wasn't it? She's taking a nap on the couch. She was looking out the window, and now she's taking a nap.
She's a great guard dog.
Did we talk about homestead dogs on the last, or was that on the podcast? We do have a podcast in the works, so
Yes,
we're going to keep everyone updated about that. Should we go ahead and talk about it, even though it's not ready yet?
Yeah.
We're going to start a podcast called Sovereign Minds, and believe it or not, it's going to be even less structured than this. This is a pretty unstructured hour, but we're still kind of like holding our tongue and stuff a little bit. Sovereign Minds is just going to be a podcast, and it's just going to be for fun for us, and we're going to do kind of like
more
this.
like
We'll do an hour.
More.
Yeah, it'll be deep dive, like rabbit hole stuff, like deep philosophical stuff, and we'll just kind of when you get sit on a back porch with a bunch of people and it gets late, and you just end up solving the world's problems and talking about the stars and stuff, like just like weird stuff like that. So that's going to be our weird, fun, quirky podcast hour. We'll try to do one per week for now.
Yeah.
But we'll keep you posted on that as we get the website set up for it and get it uploaded to all of the typical podcast places. Could you talk about the steps you recommend for those who have something to offer but have never done much in the public space? How do you approach the fear of becoming a content creator? Well, first of all, we'll get down there to Linden and let's chat, because we'll definitely make some stuff happen. But that's a really good question for a lot of people who've never entered the space. For me, starting this channel is Sovereign Village Project without my name connected. Although, I say my name on here, I'm not like hiding my identity. But by doing a YouTube channel under a different name, it made me feel more free. Because it wasn't my friends and family on here. It was just random YouTube strangers. So that made me feel like I really had license to speak more freely, which has then been a habit that's kind of like entered into the rest of my life as well. So that's one way, is to not to do it anonymously, but to think of like a publication name that can kind of separate you from the idea. Because Sovereign Village Project, this channel, this isn't all of my ideas. This isn't just about me and the stuff I like. I don't really do a lot of my music here. This channel is about the idea of forming community. So you might think about centering a publication or something like that around just an idea, or a geographical location. Now you should also look at need. For example, we're not trying to make any kind of local publication. Gabby already writes for the local newspaper here, and that need is met here, and it's done pretty well. So we don't need to address that right now. But you may be in an area that's really rural that gets no news representation, and maybe it's just one small community that nobody thinks is worth a publication. But if you're not looking at the monetary value, but you're looking at the value of making connections and connecting your community, which that will help you live a better life. If you look at it from that perspective, then just making a small publication, I mean, it could be easy as a Facebook page. Although we all have our problems with Facebook, just to say how easy it could be. I've actually started a newspaper that way. Back in Oregon, I just made a Facebook page called the Gales Creek Journal, and people started following it. And people started following it a lot, and I was providing as much news as I could. And then I made a website when there was enough demand. And then my brother actually bought the company from me, and he's still running it to this day. And that was just started as a Facebook page, and it became a real newspaper.
Yeah. I think another thing to consider is deciding what your best avenue for communicating would be. So, for example, I am much more a writer. I am not great on video, and not, like Matt does a lot of point and shoot with Sovereign Village Project, because that's just where he's comfortable, and that's how he's verbally can express himself very well. But me, on the other hand, I'm more of a writer, and I have to kind of think through my thoughts and put them down on a page, and then upload it to a website or something. So I think when you're trying to like overcome some sort of fear of creating content, decide what kind of content are you most comfortable creating and start there, because then it will just kind of expand from there. So I do a lot of writing, but I'm also practicing video so that I can incorporate those things over time. But starting where your strength lies, not trying to do something just because it's cool or it's a trend, or even because it's the way you like consuming. The way you like consuming content can be totally different from the way you like creating it. So I think that's another thing to consider. Yeah,
I mean, that's really with those thoughts in mind, and then you realize you have nothing to lose by just putting thoughts out there. I mean, only good can come from doing your best to speak truth. I mean, so yeah, I would say if you have any kind of inkling or just feeling that you just want to even have a blog or anything, I think anybody should go for that.
Yeah.
Now is the
Especially
time to
if
get
you-
information out.
Yeah, especially if you want to use it to connect to your community. Like I found through doing Finding Country things that I've connected to a lot of people in this community and built relationships that I wouldn't have even, approached had I not been pursuing these stories, and leveraging the, obviously proximity of the community to write the story. So I think using media to connect with your immediate surroundings is also a really compelling idea to me.
Yeah.
If you were to pursue some sort of local media.
Yeah. Well, and we'll definitely always be keeping everybody posted as we, this is all a new business for us. Finding Country, which is that's going to be where we're going to put most of our energies and really try to make that a solid, and more than just a publication. The idea is to also solve the publishing question. Gabby works in publishing, and she's seen a lot of problems within the industry where, and this is the same as what happens in record labels. You don't get signed to a publishing company or a record label unless you have a large social media presence.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who really have something important to say that will never see the light of day.
Yeah, they look at followers before they look at content.
Yeah, and so we want to solve for that, and really start bringing content from maybe beyond ourselves, from other authors and content creators that needs to be put out there as we continue to build Sovereign Village Project as a media channel, and as we continue to build Finding Country and get more followers. And more eyeballs, basically. We want to use that opportunity to turn that, really start consolidating all of this good homestead information out there, and put it all in one place. We're still figuring out how we want to do all that, but I think right now is a time when we all need to just delve deeply into education and knowledge, and learn about homesteading, learn about what's going on in the world, learn about really specific things like how to influence politics in a small town, things because we have to really get involved with all of this stuff, and things like we talked about in the last one, healthcare. That's something we're exploring, is how do we find alternatives to the traditional healthcare approaches. What were you telling me about the other day, that hospital bill?
Oh yeah, I saw on a friend's Facebook post that one of their friends were charged when they had a baby. They were charged $50 for mom to baby physical contact, and it's
unbelievable.
It required no work of the nurse.
If that does not frighten you the heck out of ever wanting to walk into a hospital again, So we want to start figuring these solutions out for ourselves, and then put the information out there. Basically, that's the whole idea of Finding Country. We missed one comment by Templar saying, sadly, a lot of homestead type business today is done through media like Facebook.
Yeah,
that's true, and that's a problem. I'm kind of the mindset, I'm fully aware of the privacy issues with Facebook and the data they're taking from me, but also there's useful tools on Marketplace. For example, I sell rainwater collection barrels, and I can easily sell a lot of those through there, and I've sold properties through there as well. So it's still a useful tool, but you don't want to depend on it, because it's clear that our dependence on anything is basically it's leverage for those who want to kind of force you into their value system. For example, we see it happening with vaccines, where if you don't have your vaccine pass, you can't access a lot of businesses.
Yeah,
so
you can't travel. To
me, that's just sign enough that I need to be completely independent of all of that, especially things like Facebook, who are very clearly pretty malicious actors. Nobody thinks they're the good guys anymore. So the question is, how can you become more sovereign with your web presence? And I think social media should just be used as a tool to feed people into your ecosystem. So you have maybe a solid email address and email list. And if people are following your farm on Facebook, you constantly ask them to join your email list. And you send out a regular weekly email or something like that. Here's what we have growing, and maybe you throw in a fun story or something like that. And you build your tribe there. But you can still use social media to drive people to your business. But yes, you shouldn't be dependent on it. I think every person should have a website for their homestead, for just everything they produce off of it, and just sell it. And then you should also develop local connections, try to have a physical farm stand, try to have a CSA or something in the neighborhood. We try to do both.
Like anything, diversity.
Yeah.
Help you build a strong business.
Because there's no guarantee that a person will always be able to access the internet. So
yeah. So like I would also say, having a mix. I guess if you're doing mostly vegetables, you'll obviously have a local audience already. But even from a content standpoint, address national issues and address global issues. But I think it's important to also invest in your local community because of the resilience aspect of it.
Centerline Preparedness, howdy, good to see you in here. He said he's glad to catch a live stream, enjoys our vids, and looks forward to learning more. Yeah, glad to have you here, Centerline Preparedness. Chris said, in blockchain, you have nodes, decentralized but connected to the network. Blockchain and cryptocurrency, we need a whole hour dedicated just to that because we will go deep down the rabbit hole. I bought my first single-wide trailer with Bitcoin. It's a fascinating world and an exciting one, but also I think I have a lot of concerns with how cryptocurrency is being developed but also used. But I love the idea of decentralized currency. If we can really pull this off, it could either be like our greatest foe or the greatest benefit to people who value liberty and privacy. Jack Spirko has a great bit on Pirate Coin. I would go look that up and watch that. That's I'm not actually invested in any cryptocurrency right now. Every penny I have is just going into the land, into our property. So I have no dog in the fight or anything like that. I'm kind of out of the cryptocurrency space for now. But that's a pretty exciting coin because it's really private. And private means that Uncle Sam doesn't necessarily know what's going where, and that's really what you want in a coin, because that's the whole point of cryptocurrency to me, is to remove it from the control and the view of the government. Because if they can't view it and they can't control the transactions, they can't tax it, and if they can't tax it, they can't keep up the illusion of taxes being what funds the government. And that could be a major tool in getting our freedom back. So I do like the idea of cryptocurrency. Obviously, the reliance on internet means that your currency is then still reliant on a few people, especially as like Starlink or whatever it's called, Skynet, Starlink, whatever Starlink. Yeah. Especially as that gets bigger and bigger, it seems to be kind of a monopoly, and so you are still dependent on internet, and that's still like a little bit worrisome when it comes to cryptocurrency. So I have problems with it, but I do think it's an exciting concept. Certainly, removing ourselves from the central banking system would really go a long ways in improving all of our lives. Yeah, I told you, don't get me started on cryptocurrency. I love cryptocurrency. I went through a trading phase, and I would be touring and playing shows, and then I'd go back to the hotel and I would just sit there and trade cryptocurrency all day. And it was fun, and I made some money, but in the end I was like, I don't want to just be sitting there trying to make money all day. That's not what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could have a network of local news organizations for each of the surrounding communities. Perhaps we have a central theme and some guidelines about how we report. Yeah, that's a great idea. There's so many ways we could go with that, and there are so many ways that even good small town papers, they're good, but they're not meeting the real need. For example, here in this county, we had a large, very creepy New York hedge fund come up and buy most of the downtown properties in our small town, and by the time they reported about it, all of those transactions had occurred, and they actually sold the courthouse. So the center of the whole community, the government sold off to this private investor. It was pretty bizarre, and the paper was just too slow moving. So I think there's a lot of rural areas and urban areas, but rural areas where even if there is a newspaper, it's not really doing the job that a newspaper should be doing. So that means there's a lot of room to get in there, because really you can start a newspaper with nothing more than a website and a Facebook.
Yeah. And I think I always thought it was interesting because I actually have experience starting like a real print publication in a small town, in a small county. And I always thought it was interesting that there's always this divide in small towns and in counties between the newspaper and the radio station. And I never really understood it. I mean, I know they're two separate businesses, but it's like,
it won't be much longer though either.
Yeah, but
it's all going to this, really.
Yeah, and so I never understood why they couldn't find, some sort of ways to partner with each other, because we know content nowadays just has to be rich. It has to be in all different formats. It has to be in text, but it also has to have video. It has to have audio. It has to be a rich experience, and that's something that small papers can't provide. But if they were able to, partner with other entities within the community, they could offer those sort of things, or even partnering with, local area schools. We used to have, freelancers who they were in high school and it was a little rough, but it allowed me to also be kind of a leader and, be able to mentor these people, these high schoolers, and prepare them for, college and whatnot. But like being able to utilize and leverage the different entities in your community to put out a product, a local product that is much more relevant than most local media is today.
Yeah.
And because local media is so strapped as far as resources are concerned, I just never understood why communities couldn't get a little more creative with how they serve that need, because local media is, I think it's essential to to our lives. It's essential to a community. It's essential to a nation, really. And it's if a nation just develops a national identity and a national culture, and all of your local media is rendered useless because it doesn't connect anymore with the population, then you have a real problem.
I think also there's other important things that are not other needs that are being met in terms of media in rural areas that there's a lot of room for opportunity if you're like a musician or something like that, or a dancer or an artist or a video producer, which is telling stories and preserving the culture of those areas, because we have pretty much replaced our culture, our real culture, with pop culture. We've taken instead of listening to the music that comes from the people who live in the area where we're at. For example, we live here in Middle Tennessee. It's a lot like it's not the Appalachians, but it's a lot of the same cultural. It's really basically the same culture as the Appalachians. It's rooted in, there's a lot of step dancing and Appalachian style music or old time music, mountain music. This area is really rich in that history, but people aren't listening to that. They don't have that playing at their party. They have a pop song or a country song from Nashville or something like that. And so that's just in regards to music, but in really any aspect of culture, we need to start finding those things about our communities again. Like, what's the musical tradition of my community? What's the food and the culture that we all came from? What can we be proud of in our area, and how can we bring media back to a more organic level? As a musician, musicians generally are taught to value becoming famous, rich and famous, and having a big hit. But the job of a musician traditionally was to preserve and encode knowledge, and to teach, which we really dropped the ball on. I teach as many folks as I basically can out here in this rural area, and a lot of folks are just not getting a music education, and that's across many metrics. That's really important to a well-rounded education, and just a well-rounded brain is playing music. And so there's a lot of unique niches that could be met besides just news. If you don't want to do a news publication, there's still a lot of ways to meet to decentralize and meet these needs.
Fiction too, fiction that's rooted in your experience in your own environment too is vitally important. I think, again, it's all about figuring out how you like to express yourself and letting that be your guide as to whatever you're creating.
And we'll let you in a little bit on one of our long-term goals for Finding Country. Coming from my side more is we're going to also start incorporating musical stuff more into it, because we want to portray artists who are really bringing their culture's music to the gig. In Nashville, I work with a lot of guys. I can think of one. He's a Canadian, and every once in a while he'll bust out a sea shanty because he's from a port town in Canada. And like, that's the kind of stuff we really want to feature is music that's rooted in tradition rather than some external cultural idea being sold to us. And that basically comes from my perspective as a musician, pretty deeply into Music Row and having seen the music industry and kind of being freaked out by it. Like, wow, we really need to decentralize everything.
I think traditions, and also just like being able to create media that captures the essence of your area. Like, for example, in this recent issue of Finding Country, I did an interview with a couple in town who, one, he's a he actually he managed and then owned the radio station in town. And then his wife was a teacher for, two and a half decades, I think, here. And they live on a century farm, which means their farm has been in their family for over 100 years. And I interviewed them, and, I spent an hour, 2 hours at their home. And then when I left, the woman, she gave me peach cobbler. She gave me two because she knew Matt. And so, and so she gave us, a peach cobbler for each of us. And I ended up having to go back there, and I ended up bringing her an azalea. So it's like we were, I've been doing reporting stuff for, I went to college for it. So I've been reporting for many years, and I've never had an interview where I got a gift at the end. And technically in school they tell you not to take gifts.
Although
and whatever.
You wrote that you did it in the article, so you disclosed the gift.
So I made it it's not really reporting in a way, and so Finding Country has been a challenge for me because it's reporting truth, but I'm bringing in my perspective and kind of observations as my unique humanness that I am. And that was something that struck a chord in me and made me realize, this is something unique about this area that not everybody, experiences. So I think that's another important element of capturing not just history and tradition, but also just the general essence and of a place or of people.
Yeah.
Of a group of people.
So that's really everything we're doing besides our normal day jobs, mine being music, Gabby's being working for the publishing company. Besides that, and then actually building our homestead and gardening, our main focus is this publication, as well as Sovereign Village Project, and some other projects that we have in the works as well. And I think this is kind of how we all need to be viewing the world right now, is what's our role in these hard times that we're coming into, and how do we preserve and protect our communities? How do we create communities? How do we create better places for ourselves and our families? But for me, it's a very positive and exciting thing. It doesn't have to be negative and rooted in fear. To me, my problem with the prepping movement is that it's rooted in fear, some of which is definitely legitimate, but the reaction is a fearful reaction. But to me, you shouldn't be hoarding canned food. I mean, if you have the money, go ahead, but you should really only have enough to get yourself self-sufficient. But once you have a garden and you have your preservation methods going, you can infinitely produce long-term storage food. There's a lot of ways to store food that will keep it going for 3 or 4 years. But if you have a really abundant, diverse, and resilient production system on your property of food, then you're just going to always have incoming food, especially if you're doing a permaculture style setup, like where you have perennials and annuals and you've got different meat sources, and it's very, very resilient and very diverse. Then whatever hits your farm, whatever negative thing, crazy weather or flooding or a disease hits one of your crops or one of your animals or a virus, if you're really resilient, then you can pretty well count on that food being there. And then if you have money after all of that, then go out and buy 1,000, buckets of flour or something. Not to bash on prepping, we do some reasonable amount of prepping ourselves, but for me, that's ancillary to the skills, because also a lot of people, they stock up on seeds and they can have 1,000 seeds, but it doesn't matter if you don't know what to do with those seeds and how to really get your garden established. Like, we're in year 3, and really we're only just now hitting a major production where probably 25% of each meal is from the garden. It's taken us 3 years just to get to that point.
I think people think that they can just throw some seeds in the ground and they'll get they'll be able to just live off of it. And it's no.
Or if you don't want to garden right now, at least just go mulch the heck out of a patch of ground, so you have one area of really good soil in a couple of years.
So you're ready for it.
But really, there's so many reasons that everyone should just be growing food. And I really, truly believe, and I say this to my family and friends, I think every single one of us should all be producing as much food as we possibly can, as fast as we possibly can. I've gone into the reasons before, and I think we're all familiar with them, but our food supply is not nutritious, and it's provably, across many metrics, it's very detrimental to our health. It causes us to get sick and to get more cancer. And every time you get that cheap food at the supermarket, you're not saving money because it's costing you money in healthcare later.
Yeah.
So even though we're not economically where we would like to be we're not financially where we would want to be to do this, we're already starting to switch our buying habits away from the supermarket to buying organic, or not organic, but produce from local farmers that we know and trust. And of course it costs more money, but it's not just that we get better tasting food. We get food that's actually nourishing our bodies, and that's certainly worth more money.
Yeah.
We're far from perfect yet. We're still still hitting up the grocery store, but we're sprinting towards self-sufficiency.
Yeah, but I also think these sort of things are a matter of like living out your values too, because you can't on the one hand blame a corporation for using pesticides, but then be totally willing to put pesticides on your own garden, whether that's your flowers or whatnot. So it's like and you also can't say that farming is destroying our land in the US if you're not also tending to a garden and truly understand what it means to how farmers are destroying the land. So it's like you have to have that understanding before you you can't point the finger at someone else if you're not.
And that's exactly what is presented to us as the solution by the environmentalist movement is, they call out a lot just regulate and make laws on people, but everyone clamoring for that. You look at I look on social media and I look at my friends who are demanding carbon taxes and things like that. And I look at their lifestyle and they're not living our lifestyle. We barely throw anything away. How often do we take a single bag of garbage to the dump? We're producing our own food. We're seeking to regenerate the soil around us. And so for other people who are living inside of a city, drinking plastic and using petroleum for everything they do for their entire existence, like for them to tell us that they want to regulate us and make us pay a carbon tax or regulate our farm or our livestock, like it's so absurd. And you realize they're replacing action with just pointing a gun at somebody and saying, you fix the problem. And that's kind of really across the spectrum of our entire society right now.
Yeah, true.
And that won't play out well. We have it. Let's see. It was another comment. Serendipity blooming. That's a really good point. As we move forward and continue to decentralize, we will expand the gift economy, and there's more humanity in that. Yeah, the gift economy is really underrated. Just in every transaction. Now, basically, every time I meet up with somebody, I'm bringing something from my farm with me, and I'm building a connection that it's so much more valuable than like the actual cost of that item. Yesterday I was in Nashville going to a gig, and I'm getting quite the reputation as being the guy who like has fresh tomatoes at the gig. I had a bunch of tomato plants, actually from Cindy and Roy. They might be on tonight. And I was giving them to my friend Jack, who's a musician down there. And he pulls up in his Corvette, and I'm pulling out this box of tomato plants. And I felt like I was doing a drug deal with tomato plants. But in every interaction, like I'm giving and receiving stuff from the farm right now. And what a like fun, beautiful way to live. But also the amount of trees and perennials and things that I've gotten for free and given for free, it would be so much more than I could afford. And the people I've given to them, it's very valuable to them as well. But they don't really cost us anything. They're our surplus. We're just giving our surplus away. So the gift economy is, I really think, a large part of the future. I don't think it's that we're going to exclusively switch to just giving everything away. If you have a craft that you perfect, you should charge money or some kind of capital or barter for it. You should be paid for that. But I think the gift economy will always, in times of economic upheaval, it will return towards that more, especially when people are trying to find out who is their community, who's their tribe. And a lot of people put out feelers by giving out a gift. And then when you give them a gift back, you're kind of saying like, yes, let's have a business relationship here. Or a communal relationship. Like, you can trust me, I can trust you. I think that's kind of the intangible thing being said. And it's just fun. Let's see. How often do you go to the grocery store on average? Oh, that's Yona asking. Hello, Yona. We still go quite a bit because we also don't stock up. We just kind of, do it in between our errands. Even though we're out pretty far in the country, there's a small independent grocery store that's right at the intersection that we always have to drive through. So we still probably go once or twice a week. We're not really getting any more vegetables.
But we're just, yeah.
So we're mainly getting cheese. That's one we've not yet sourced locally. We're going to try to source dairy locally here because we just can't give up cheese.
Mhm.
We love cheese and sour cream and ice cream and all that stuff. So, and we're not in a position to have a dairy animal yet. So in the meantime, we need to find a connection locally who's raising their animals in a way that we like. So that's actively on our list. So cheese and dairy products, that's something we buy a lot that we want to weed out. We still buy a lot of beans and rice. It's just still so cheap, and it stores well. So we're kind of doing prepping with that by just rotating in and out rice and beans, and canned beans as well. And that's really the extent of our prepping, is just kind of having extra stores of those things and then rotating them out. So we're still justifying buying from the store because we don't have all of our preservation systems up yet. So we want to have still, long-term storage of food. But the next year, as we move to the 5-acre homestead, next spring is when we'll probably be able to be completely self-sufficient in terms of food.
Yeah.
We'll still probably be buying other food as a luxury, but we will be producing all of the food we need off of that. I feel pretty confident if at the pace we're going right now. So yeah, we're still going to the grocery store, but it's just for a few things like that, and spices. We're also going to be trying to replace a lot of our spices with herbs because it tastes so much better, and it's more fun to define your dishes around your property. It's so much fun. Every single meal we cook is completely defined by what grows well here.
Yeah.
And that's how food cultures develop. Back to that topic, talking about like rediscovering our cultures. Food culture is something that in America we've never really had a chance to properly explore.
Mm-hmm.
Some regions like the Cajuns and stuff have a pretty rich food legacy, but other places like Indiana do not. And that's because as soon as a lot of areas were settled, we already had commodified agriculture moving, and the Industrial Revolution was well underway. And so food started getting shipped, which meant that, think about wines in France. None of them would be distinct except for the grapes that just happened to grow well there. That defined what Champagne was, and all of the different wines are defined by those regions. That's what grew there in those regions.
Mm-hmm.
But we've forgotten that in America. We try to mimic other people's food regions, but really what it should be is what grows well here. Here sumac is a random thing that grows really well here, and it's native. So sumac should be in a lot of our dishes. That should define our food. So I think this is a rich time to rediscover and to establish food culture in areas that it doesn't really exist in, and to incorporate existing ones. Here in the South, catfish is huge. We live down by the Tennessee River, and catfish is a part of the culture. So that, of course, that should stay as a staple of food culture. But then what else can we add? As we learn what perennials do really well here, let's start incorporating those. And that's why we're trying to. One of our other billion ideas we're working on is a farm to table. Not a restaurant, but a farm to table experience at our farm that we have on a monthly or a weekly basis.
Like a dinner event.
And we want to use that as an opportunity to show not just what we're producing, but what's this region, what is it proud of? What does it have to offer? We have the Duck River here. That's the most biodiverse river in the United States. More fish species than all of Europe. So we should be showcasing the fish that come from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fun thing to explore. And it's really fun if you're kind of a research nerd. You can also really dig into traditional foods in your area by learning what the local tribes ate. I've been really doing a lot of research into the Cherokee and what their diets traditionally were. Yeah. And by doing so, I've been learning about the abundance of food that's all around me, and the abundance of medicines, because they were using all of that food and all of those medicines in this specific climate for millennia. And so those of us trying to live close to the land, we would do well to pay attention to that and to start bringing back that ancient wisdom and those food sources.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have any more comments, we're coming pretty close to an hour, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a wonderful chat so far. I'm getting more and more comfortable with the live part of it. With the point and shoots, obviously they're not perfect, but at least I can stop and start them. So it's a little more daunting to think if I make a mistake or say something really stupid, it's going to be up there to stay. But so far so good, I think. Well, looks like we've got our last comment there. Want to call a little bit early? We went over last week. We could end probably 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
I feel like we covered a good broad range of topics, and I kind of want to leave it there.
Let us know your thoughts.
Yes, please. Let's if you watch this one later, as most of you probably will, let's just keep the conversation going past the live chat. Let's
Is there like an email that they can send?
yes, there's an email, but of course there's also the regular comments you can make.
Regular comments.
If anybody does want to email me, it is sovereignvillageproject@gmail.com. I'm struggling to keep up with all of the emails in there, so if I take a week or two, sorry about that, but I'm slowly getting more organized when it gets to reading comments and communicating. But otherwise, yeah, let's keep the conversation going about media, about entertainment, and about rediscovering culture and promoting culture. And by culture, I mean any culture that is your culture. This is not exclusive to anything. Like if we look at the culture in our area, there's actually multiple cultures, and I want to discover all of them. I was just talking about learning about the indigenous tribes that were here, and I want to learn about their culture because that's very valuable. And I want to learn more about my culture, and I want to learn about the culture of the other people in this area, because it defines the landscape and it defines community, and it's how you build community as well. Mm-hmm. And that's what this channel is about. It's all about community, everybody. So thanks for being a part of this little community. Holly's getting really tired, and I think so are we.
Bedtime.
So I do believe we're going to sign off, everybody. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.